Warning, this is my personal predictions for what I want/think could happen in Deltarune Chapter 5. It is okay if my predictions do not line up with yours, or anyone else's for that matter, because at the end of the day, this is all for fun. Welcome to Redacted's last chance at predicting Deltarune before the new chapter releases. I know, at the time of this recording, Chapter 5 I think is about 4 days from releasing, and I decided to make this video and try and predict the newest chapter. Hopefully correct. This video will be partly scripted, however I may ramble or border the line between theories and fanfictions in order to get my thoughts out the way I want them. So the way that this video is going to go about is I have a few things I want to go over as topics, and then I'll provide my evidence for why I believe them. Some of these don't have a lot of evidence because I'm just going off of memory. So this is the most obvious with the most evidence. Alright, here's my evidence. The Flower Man trapped in Asylum panel of the prophecy that was shown in Chapter 4 obviously predicts Asgore as the Flower Man. And in Deltarune, he operates Flower King, as we all know. And so he's the only gardener that we know that's tied to flowers and all that. So I feel like that points towards Flower King Dark World. In the Chapter 5 trailer, Chris is shown fighting by themselves an enemy that we cannot see. However, we can see the bullet pattern. And this exact bullet pattern is the same one that we find from the Cyan Soul in the Omega Flower fight from Undertale, which is probably pointing to the Cyan Flower and other flowers playing a major role in the Dark World like mini-bosses, and I think we're gonna probably fight them. The Chapter 5 trailer shows all these flower-based enemies with a huge emphasis on flowers and fauna, like the Floridans, which are the new Rudins for the chapter. There's also that one cherry pot looking darkener. I don't know the name to it. Whatever that thing is named, you know what it looks like. In Chapter 4, the old man does talk about the field of pink and gold being charred in a inferno of jealousy. You can make out it looks like cherry trees, you know, for the huge amount of Japanese influence that we see in the trailer of Chapter 5. I think you can kind of point that as be similar to flowers. But Miss Mizzle in Chapter 4, when you use the act button, she'll talk about how her biggest follower is a bluest flower, and Asgore shop, in case you don't know, has 2 different blue flowers. And I already theorized earlier that the Cyan Flower we're probably gonna fight them. This is really just out of the blue. I do think that the sun in the chapter's trailer, I do think it's a possible outcome that the sun isn't really an actual sun, but it might be like the Dark World version of high intensity discharge light, or HID, which can help flowers grow indoors and are used by flower shops. I think that's what the sun could possibly represent. So okay, that's all I have for the Flower King Dark World, because I mean it's most likely Flower King or mixed with other people, or maybe Asgore isn't the one who makes it. I mean, my evidence for this is a little subjective, as I really want an Asgore fight, but Asgore does have a black shard, meaning he's possibly working with the knight, or it can make him important enough for any type of mini boss or boss fight in a Dark World. Because maybe he might not have a boss fight, but he might be really important to the chapter, as he might have a shadow crystal or a black shard. The charred in a vast jealousy could point to Asgore because in Undertale he had fire magic. If he's in the Dark World, maybe he gets the same similar powers that he has in Undertale. But with Undyne, when she enters the Dreamer's Dark World for the little bit that she's in there, she gains her power magic from Undertale with the magical spears. And this is where it starts to get a little fanfiction-y, but I do think that Sans getting closer to Toriel, or him bringing Toriel to the festival, may make Asgore jealous in some way to do something that he may regret, or motivate him to open the Dark World in Flower King. The Flower Man trapped in Asylum panel in the code is referred to Boss 3. I think Queen and Tenna both have their own, the Queen's Chariot cannot be stopped, and Lord of Screens is cleaved by Red Blade. In those two, the Queen is referred to Boss 1 in the code, and Tenna is Boss 2 in the code. So I feel like that's pointing and representing to the fact that it's gonna be a boss fight with Asgore, whether that be a mini-boss or a actual boss fight. Alright. what I mean by flower human parallels is, I think in Asgore's flower shop, Flower King, there are the 7 flowers, and each one of them has a color from the distinct 6 human souls from Undertale. And they seem to just reference them right in chapter 1. We didn't know what they were really doing besides them just existing. And then there was one flower that wasn't one of the 6 human souls from Undertale. It's possibly could be a Flowey. Not the flower, but I think it could be a Flowey character. Just appearing, being an antagonist, maybe being a foil to the fun gang. The Cyan, like, soul attack that you can see in the Chapter 5 trailer does kind of show the fact that they might, or it's similar to like how Undyne has the spears in the Dark World. They may get the soul attack pattern from the Omega Flowey fight that we saw for each color of the flower, and then them being a mini boss, etc. Surprisingly, this feels like a more tangible, like, thing that could happen, but I don't know. I kind of think of more, like, spots in the game where Azrael is teased to show up. Because I know the 2 big things is that in the beginning of Chapter 1, with the car ride with Toriel, she says that Azrael's coming back next week. However, yes, that is teasing Azrael's return, but it's also not next week, unless you count Sunday as the start of the week. Because the way that the, if we base this off what the Forgotten Man says in his, Chapter 3 monologue, on Thursday, he sells donuts. On Friday, he's in the trash. On Saturday, I let it cool on the windowsill, but then on Sunday he is harvesting the wheat. So there's only like 4 or 3 days, like 3 or 4 days he gives, and so we can use that to piece that Chapter 1 is happening on Thursday, Chapter 2 is Friday, Chapter 3 is Friday night, Chapter 4 is a Saturday, and then Sunday would be Chapter 5, which wouldn't be a week, and it's the same day as the festival. So maybe maybe Chapter 5 like somehow lasts more than 1 day, which it wouldn't happen since chapters 1 through, I guess 1 and 2 were a full day, 3 was half a night, so it could be whatever you want. But I do think that it's possible, because in Chapter 4, Asgore does bring up that he wants to sell flowers to make sure Azrael has fun at the festival, whether that be for money reasons. I've kind of forgot at this point, but overall that's what I'm thinking. Now, this probably doesn't have much evidence for this. It's more like a hunch or a fan fiction, you know, for what I personally want, but I do think Chapter 5 could end with the roaring. The reason I say that is because there's a little bit of a pattern with 5s in Deltarune. Whenever you meet the Forgotten Man, supposedly is going to be one last encounter in Chapter 5, because whenever we go back to his Chapter 3 dialogue about him harvesting the wheat and selling donuts by the bakery and being in the trash, it seems like after the harvesting the wheat, there's not going to be another time where we see him. So based on that, there's only probably going to be 5 chances for us to see him. And then there's also the last Shadow Crystal being next chapter, which is the 5th Shadow Crystal. So notice the pattern with it happening in 5s. Now, this is the part of the video where I actually have, like, nothing. I think Susie is going to find out about the Roaring group chat with Chris, Carol, and the Knight, and possibly Asgore. I do think Susie is going to find out about the soul as well. So, for the Roaring group chat, I think that's just what it's building towards. Susie may be questioning in Chapter 5 that Chris is being controlled by this heart that supposedly their soul is controlling them and doing stuff that isn't what Chris would do. And so Susie may go like, oh my gosh, I'm not actually friends with you because I've been friends with the person controlling you. And I just think that the story's building up for Susie finding the soul in the Roaring group chat. And it's kind of it's hinted towards in Chapter 4 because, or it's not really hinted, it's kind of spoon-fed to you. Because right before the final prophecy, where you see it in the 3rd sanctuary, you get told, or Susie says that, she says, hey Chris, is that your soul? Is that red thing your soul? Like something on the lines of that. Which brings up the fact that she can see the soul. It's not like the soul's just kind of invisible. And I think that's just where the story's going. And now this is interesting because I hope we can get another Light World soul section like how Chapter 4 had with the Holiday Household, where we got to go with the soul and just move around their house, bump stuff, and do whatever. And I don't have any evidence for this, but I do think Noelle might show up in Castletown or any of the Chapter 5 Dark Worlds, because Chapter 4 showed us that Chapter 5 may not just have one Dark World. I think that Noelle may be in there because in the Go Nintendo articles with the picture of the festival, the one screenshot we have of the festival, it seems to be that we have Noelle in our party because Noelle's following Susie and Chris, so that may show that Noelle could follow us in Castletown, or Susie and Noelle will go do their own thing and go on the Ferris wheel and do their own time, enjoy the festival, while Chris may go to like Castletown or whatever. But that's mainly just a hunch, and I really hope it happens. Alright, well, that's what I have for my prediction video. I hope this was like entertaining, and I hope I didn't ramble too much. And yeah, this was fun to make. Thank you for watching, guys, and Deltarune tomorrow!